introduce
All
Jacob
right.
Buchanan and our Zoom Artist Talk. We're here at the Kansas City Artist Coalition and Jacob's exhibition, Moving Ghosts. And Jacob, you have a nice lecture slideshow for us. So you're gonna share a screen. Go ahead and just go on into it.
Yeah, okay. So hi, I'm Jacob. And my project is Moving Ghosts. So share the screen, click on this one. All right. So I think that should pop stuff up for everyone. Drag that away. I've got notes.
All right, looks good.
All right. So, well, I guess the first thing is I'm gonna just introduce Moving Ghosts as I do with any giving presentation to my general artist statement. And that's Moving Ghosts is an ongoing project that I started at the beginning of 2019. I am collaborating with people to create anti-portraits set in locations important to them while they wear their favorite outfit. So yeah, welcome to Moving Ghosts. It really started in November 2018. I had lost my grandma. She died, and I went through a really bad breakup and was at a transitional period where a lot of my friends were moving away. And I got really sad. And so about 2 months later, I started taking these portraits of myself for a healing process to give for me something to do. And during my brooding state, I came up with this poetic idea that all people are ghosts. They move along through life, and that we all have different selves throughout our lives. You have your childhood self, you have your teenage self, you have your college self, and all of these are different. They're all still you, but they're gone. You're a different person of that person, a ghost of that person. And so I thought that was a kind of fun way to name a project. That's where the name came from. And so I didn't just want photos to be taken of myself. They're really easy to do because it's a really easy model, but just taking photos of me doesn't really do anything for anyone besides me. So I wanted to go take photos of others. So I was researching portraiture. A lot of my research came from social media. Instagram was the big thing at that point in time. Here's a screenshot of portrait on Instagram. That's the top posts when I searched it. And what does portrait mean? It is a painting, drawing, or photograph or engraving of a person, especially one depicting only the face or head and shoulders. A representation or impression of someone or something in language of film. So when I look at these Instagram photos that I was bombarded with, there's thousands and thousands of pages with these photos that have thousands of photos that look very similar to all of these. And I noticed something really quickly, that everything labeled as portraiture was just an aesthetic performance of self. Sorry, need water. I noticed portraiture, generically labeled, is just an aesthetic performance of self. Whether that being in photography, painting, or any kind of medium, all portraiture comes down to as simple as just aesthetic performance of self. And I thought that was very intriguing, especially compared next to the fashion photos that I was looking at on these same platforms, where they were using the medium of photography to take portraits of the clothes, and the model was just a vessel to do so. Yeah. Ooh, I'm reading my things, and I'm not actually reading what I wrote at all. thought I should let everyone know that. This reading is really small. I hope it makes sense. So basically, what all this means is I wanted to come up with something that I thought was better than generic portraiture. And I think portraiture has this really cool thing that can happen where with the representation or impression of someone, it's supposed to show their identity. And identity isn't necessarily just the face or the bust, the head. It's who someone is specifically at a moment in time, which also goes along into moving ghosts, the idea of that, that I think a really good portraiture, you should be able to look at it and say, I think I understand parts of who this being is, or who they're trying to let us know who they are. Because it's absolutely absurd to say, I understand who that is from one image. And so I went on to this thing to reject portraiture. And so by rejecting portraiture, I covered the face, as that is the main objective. And what's left after you cover the face is two things. You have the body and the location, or the surrounding. So I guess body, location, absence of face. So anti-portrait and that. And so I'll talk about posing later, but I personally love clothes. I like to create new outfits for things in my closet I haven't worn in a while so I can hear them again. I believe clothes can tell you a lot about a person, their style, their time period that they're living in, their preferences on all sorts of things, the mood, their attitude, whether they themselves like clothes and care about their appearance or not. And so a big element of this project is that each person, each participant chooses what they wear. And they each have their own reasons for it. And my goal is just to capture that the best I can while taking the challenge of eliminating the face. The locations are just as important because, yeah, they're important because I challenge you guys all just to take a moment and think about what places you choose to represent yourselves and where you spend your time and your place impacting your lives. And if someone would to go and take a photo of a location, would you say, hey, yeah, that represents me really well? And I think that's kind of the goal with the pairing of these two, to have multiple moving objects that people can relate to something in. I came across this article online on a website called the H-Hub. It's a website that has a blog and tries to help get artists for freelancing jobs. And it talked about boudoir, not just the sexualization of it, but the history of the style and its linguistic progression. That basically stated that boudoir came from French in origin, and it was originally this room, a location where someone would go to be alone. And I took that as where one could really express who they were without having the fear of the mob or like the Catholic Church at the time, where someone could be themselves. And so all these things, I set off to go take photos of people without taking a photo of them directly. And so enter Travis. Travis is the first person who participated in Moving Ghosts, probably around early March, late February 2019. He didn't choose this location though. I chose this location because he just agreed to go test this theory. I explained it to him and he was like, yeah, I'm down to go make like, I guess, a prequel. So I had found this old mattress and this car in the middle of nowhere, and he wore his favorite outfit at the time, which was this. He was really proud of these sneakers and his joggers, really into the hype beach culture with Supreme and stuff that was raging at the time. And we set out to take the challenge of trying to take portrait photography of him with without taking his face. And that's what ended up here. The first ones, having him lay down on the car and taken from a higher angle, I chose to do that because I really like something called the truth claim in photography. The truth claim is where the viewer sees a photograph and they typically believe truth. They read that actually happened, that is what I'm looking at, and they relate it as truth. And I like to play with that, where I was hoping they would see him as more of the performance of dead, the complete opposite. And the reason for this is because I was really trying to kill the model, or the idea of model being performance vessel. And so even though they perform dead, it's still the absence of performance at all, I guess. The reason for I would say this is because I asked a lot of these people in these positions to take a deep breath, close their eyes, and release their limbs. And so in that way, it becomes a full relaxation. And the first person to completely participate is Chrissy. He came up to me in an H&M because he liked my clothes. And I told him I was a photographer, and he told me he was a hip hop artist and he wanted some photos for his EP. And so I pitched him the idea of moving ghosts, and he agreed to sit down with me and come up with a photo shoot. And so we came over one day and had a 45-minute long interview. Chrissy, his location was his childhood park and his school's track. I want to say team. I know team's not the right word. Track field, track ring, something like that, were the two locations he chose. As for his outfit, that actually corresponds to his love of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where they would wear wacky clothes. He didn't tell me that originally at the time. I reached out to him after telling Ash I didn't actually know why he chose that, and he said that's why. For JoJo is anime, by the way. For his EP that he was doing at this time, he had this great concept of if this was me. He grew up in this really cool, peaceful park where that's where he enjoyed his childhood. It's where he learned how to lift. It's where he learned how to rap and all that stuff. But he always felt like when he went anywhere, people assumed he was ghetto. And so he made this entire EP about if he was ghetto, but that he actually wasn't. And so we decided to give him the jewelry for that and put a paper bag over his head to be as generic as possible, because that's what he felt people labeled him as. And then on the flip side, we then covered his face with the Nintendo 64, which was his favorite game console growing up. And that's where a lot of his childhood and fond memories are from. And so we just really wanted to highlight that in these photos. Celeste is someone who is a cool participant because she's from Atlanta, Georgia. And I met her online through a website called Daisy, where its sole intention is to have just artists collaborate with each other. You pitch a project and people ask to participate in it. And she said she wanted to participate in moving ghosts. So she drove me all over Atlanta. The two spots depicted here are a graveyard in downtown and an ice rink where I guess she would ice skate after when she was stressed out during college and she needed a break from studying. As for the aspect of blurry face here, it was to see if I could kind of paint with the camera, which is something I've done in the past, putting it on high exposure and drawing, trying to mimic, I guess, pictorialism in a sense. And I was hoping to get like an expressionism of the 1950s painting movement, which was my whole goal with that. While still, while being paired with the others from the ice rink, you'd still know that it was at the ice rink. As for this one, I would say it's more successful with my concept, as it shows her outfit and it shows her hair, which is, when you read her interview, something she talks about, how she dyes her hair a lot, never goes back to her original haircut, changes, and we really wanted to emphasize that in all of the sets of Celeste. Laura is someone who I really enjoyed taking photos of. She had paragraphs of reasons for all of her places. The two here being the Slabs in Kansas City, which is just this little abandoned pool in a park down in Midtown that skateboarders come and hang out with and do tricks, and people just sit there and hang out. She also had Matty Rose, a church, and the slide downtown. While we were talking, I think the challenge when I was taking these is I wanted to back up and show the location more. In previous photos, it was really centered still around body and people, similar to this, where I wanted to go out and vertical and try to show more of the mood of the location. And I was still playing with asking people to die. And I think this is just still absurd. I think it's funny. I hope people enjoy that it's completely opposite of what a lot of photos are, where they're trying to make themselves feel, I guess, better about their aesthetic, to lift them up. I want this to lift them up in a different way. Yeah. Hannah, I wanted to talk about, actually, funny story about Hannah is that when we were taking these photos and she was slumped over, this lady slammed on her brakes and full on got out of her car screaming, "Are you okay?" Because she thought Hannah was just like, I don't know, just collapsed into this bin and didn't see me at all. I thought that was so sweet that someone would come and try to help someone like that. She chose this movie theater in Inglewood, which is the neighborhood she grew up in, and the bridge just down the street that people walk over to get to it, where she said she remembered going to buy her grandma's cigarettes, and it's then later down the street she worked at the restaurant that was there, and this movie theater was really the staple of that little community, and so that's where we chose the location. It's where she even had her first kiss. If you want, you can read her little article. She says it was gross, immediately regrets the decision. Dan was someone I also was trying to capture more of the background when I met him. He is the oldest participant, and his location was the West Bottoms in Kansas City. It's the industrial district, and he had this place because this is where he would go and take film photography. Dan is a portrait photographer, goes back and forth between here and Arizona, and does photos that people pay him to do, like senior portraits, weddings. And he would go to the West Bottoms to escape and take the photos I think all photographers take of just graffiti, rocks, abandoned places. And so we came in and explored and tried to take photos of him with that like grime, that aesthetic that draws photographers in. And I hope we really captured that. I think the abandoned cars and this pipe is really weird. I have no idea what was up with that in the set, but I think that's why photographers enjoy places like that. Courtney and Caleb is cool because they're the only couple I've taken with this. And they're one of the ones I really remember to also back up and get location. And they are thrifters. They like to go into thrift shops and take really cool clothes and then fix them up and sell them to people. They never do it super overpricedly. and it's been making them money ever since. And this is one of their favorite thrift shops that they go to. It's called A Whole Lot of Stuff. They specifically request the shout out to that shop. So I guess shop local. Um, yeah, it's so oversaturated. And when I was in there, there's some really cool things in there. They talked about how they met while working at Forever 21, really young, to growing their own business. Yeah, when COVID hit, couldn't really take photos of anything. So I went out and took a whole bunch of self-portraits again. I always take self-portraits to test different theories, like having the clothes on backwards for these, or putting up a empty slide to a fence to nowhere, because I think that's how we all felt around July and August of COVID. But at the same time, I still wanted to be able to take photos with people. And I bandwagoned onto this really cool thing that people were doing of doing digital photo shoots. So I was able to do 3 of them from around the world. Bobby from Minnesota, Coltrane from London, and Dominica from Poland were all great people who allowed me to experiment with this. The first 2, I ran into the quality issue where I was trying to actually screenshot the image. And so that would make the full image completely digital. And then projecting it would keep it fully digital, never actually having to enter the physical space. I thought was kind of fascinating. I thought it was also really interesting that I could ask these people to just place the camera in a certain spot and still pose them and get a photo that is even more so collaborative. I don't know. So yeah, I think I just kind of rambled. I hope that was informative. Does anyone have any questions or want me to go into depth into anything? Question mark. Yes.
While we wait for some questions, oh, here's a question. These pieces are similar. Okay, we're waiting for questions to come in. Anyone can write their questions in the chat also, or unmute themselves. Jacob, you want to unshare your screen so we can see everyone's faces?
Yes. Did we actually get more people? We do have more people.
Yes.
Sweet.
Everyone.
All right.
Ada says, I'd like to hear more about the emotions behind it. I find some make me laugh.
No, okay, is that inappropriate? No, I think part of the goal is I want to make them laugh. So I'm really inspired by photographers like David Clench, Brendan Mueller, who are actually both band photographers, who go in and just document who people are. And I think people are silly and absurd, and the whole, I guess, idea of a portraiture telling you anything about someone is absurd. And so I want you to look at them and giggle, you know? I want them as the model to be uplifted in a way, and I want you to, the viewer, to have a smile. Yeah. Does that answer that question?
I thought it was really interesting to add the thread of asking some of the subjects or all the subjects to kind of take a deep breath and just go limp or, you know, dead, what you used, term you used. You can really see that thread through all of the images, and it really gives a cohesive body of work for this series. There's so many different elements that you're using with it, and you can really spend a lot of time with the series, especially with all of the transcribed interviews that you have. There's QR codes in the space that you can scan on your phone, and it goes to his website, and there's just endless content with these images.
Yeah. Yeah. The posing's super interesting. Sometimes I want to start moving away from just asking people to die and start making poses that are even more interesting and more intricate. But I'm not quite sure how to do that. I think that's going to be coming from talking with future participants and asking them, I guess, to understand and having an understanding about their body and how it can move.
One other thing that I was curious about bringing up is what's your plan or intention of continuing the digital aspect of it? I know you're using a projector here. What are your ideas moving forward with that? Or what
Yeah.
doing this exhibition also?
Ooh, you cut out. Can you ask the
Oh,
that
my
last question one
part,
more time?
what you've learned from doing this exhibition and what you plan on doing.
Oh, okay. So for digital, I still really like the idea of the projector on canvases. I think it has a lot of potential, especially with having it be able to scroll through. The series is something that I'm working towards to be able to get. I wonder if it would work better in a fully dark room or having a better projector would work. Things I've learned here, I was really debating on how I wanted to set up the gallery show. I knew I wanted it to do similar salon style because I wanted that oversaturation of medium present similar to the online realm. Whatever social media, wherever you digest your media, there's so much everywhere, and I want it to mimic that. You go onto my Instagram, it's all there. You go onto my website, it's all there. You go to the search bar, there's just millions of photos similar in every single niche genre. It's quite interesting. I debated whether or not I wanted to print directly on canvases to match similar the projection, or if I wanted to do framed or not framed at all. I elected to go with a print, not framed, because the quality of print is higher than that on a canvas. And I didn't quite want to go full framed because honestly, economic costs, COVID, that would have been really expensive. And this makes it so people can go and frame it any way they want. They don't have to have my frame. They can look at the image and make their own assumption about it. There's some questions here. I found the image on IG between the rocks very mournful. I came in late. Can you talk about that specific work? Sure thing. On Instagram, the image between the rocks. Do you mind if I share my screen again? I can pull up my Instagram.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Profile. All right, so we're gonna share screen. Ooh, can I see the questions still? I have lost the chat thing, but I believe the image between the rocks is up here. I believe is the one you're talking about with that question. And this is actually a photo of someone, of a thing. It's a band, LK Ultra. They're I'm not sure if they're still together, or I know they've had a lineup shift since then. But at one point with Moving Ghosts, I was going around and interviewing bands and trying to get them to participate because music is very similar to me as in clothes. I think they coincide in generational representation, who people are, different ways to identify. And I thought bringing bands and their clothes together in one portrait would be really cool. And so we came up with this and a few others. This rock side is on the banks of the Kansas River, right off of downtown Lawrence. There's a cafe that they would sit and write their music on right over the bend. And so, yeah, that would be what I would talk about with that image. Can I see the chat on this?
I
Yeah.
can. Next question, if you want to. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Ada had another question. Do you feel a bond now with the models you use in this project?
I try to actually. I really try not to be emotionally manipulative and really get to know the people. Some of them, we all stay in contact. I know Travis, the very first person, hit me up. He loves the photos we did. He congratulated me on the show. Dominica is an artist. She's the latest one. And we now talk about VR every now and then. And she's working on her own art, and I hope to stay in touch with her with that and hope we can collaborate again. So yeah, that's kind of really the goal. I always feel really good when they come back and tell me that they love the photos and that I've even had a few of them say it's the best photos they've ever had of them taken. So that's always really nice. Yeah, the figure's head wrapped in a fetal position. We can talk about that. I'll bring that up. Share screen again. All right, so that's this right here. And this is Caleb. Caleb is one of my good friends and ex-roommate, and he lets me used to experiment on him taking photos all the time when this first started. We can go back down, all the way down the Instagram. And so this here coincides with this photo here where we hiked out along the train tracks and found this giant desert pit and lit this photo, and we were experimenting on how to cover the face. These were his two favorite outfits at the time, but the locations themselves weren't necessarily important. It was just a place we had found to experiment with that. And we did this all over. Here's another one where he climbed on the roof and I got into a tree, and we took that location, our apartment at the time, or had him hang out the window backwards. I think these are very silly. I can't take claim for that idea. I've seen maybe 500 photos with someone out a window, but still experimental, or where we were still experimenting with this white sheet mask. And so that's actually a good thing to talk about in the fetal position photo. I was trying to move away from just having the specific white pillowcase head to other ways to hide the face. I thought bandanas were a great way, especially if they wore them, they could use their own, which that is his. And yeah, that would be about that. I hope that answers your question satisfyingly.
What a great talk. That was so much more in depth than we had with the video interviews. This will be a great addition.
Sweet, thank you. I'm glad. I didn't want to just read the people's interviews back to people.
Yeah, it was great. Anybody else have questions before
Any other questions? Yeah.
you?
Well, thank you all for attending. I appreciate your guys' interest. I hope you learned something and have a great evening.
How long is the exhibition on view? So your exhibition is up until January 8th, 20.
Oh, Brad and I were saying we're gonna go down there and see it.
Yeah.
Till January 8th.
And you could also see a 360 virtual walkthrough on the website if you go to kansascityartistcoalition.org and click on the exhibitions tab, and you'll see it there, and all the pieces for sale as well.
Yes. All right.
Okay.
Virtual tab link.
Oh yes, there you go.
Cool. So you can just click that. All right, cool.
All right. Well, excellent. Have a good night, everyone. That's good.
Sweet. Thank you, Brittany.